I'm here with Stephen Farrell of Trinity College Dublin, who is one of the keynote speakers at TNC2014. And Stephen, you've been talking about pervasive monitoring as an attack on the internet. Could you perhaps, first of all, just explain in what ways you think that the pervasive monitoring we've heard about has been happening is an attack on the internet?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess the basic thing is that, if as we found out, it turns out that a number of nation states and possibly others, with collaboration and collusion from commercial entities, are recording a lot of traffic, then essentially what's happening then is the network is not doing what it's supposed to do, is to bring the packets from one place to another to allow people to communicate the way they're intending to. And it goes beyond this. It's not just passively recording traffic. It's also the case that we've seen cases reported where they're actively breaking into hosts. And I guess the point is that for a machine on the internet, if you're a router in the middle of the network somewhere, you have no idea the source or the motivation of any of these things. They're all attacks. They all look like they're the same thing from the point of view of the network. So
from a technical standpoint, effectively.
Right.
And you were describing quite a lot of different ways in which the internet is affected, the data is affected, and you were making the point effectively it's not an attack, but actually a whole collection of things together.
Right, yeah. I mean, so the individual kind of exploits, the individual techniques that have been used are almost all known for quite a long time. I guess what we, the technical community, haven't done so well is to consider that somebody might be doing all of these things at many locations against many protocols all at the same time. So that's a kind of scale factor that is probably new from the recent revelations, and to which we can see that there are reactions both within the standards community, within people implementing, and with people deploying and operating networks.
And what kind of damage has been done, would you say, as a result of this?
There's multiple types of damage. I mean, clearly, if you happen to be making a doctor's appointment and you're using some mail or some website or making a phone call, then you may consider that it's damage that information is recorded somewhere without your permission. Also, there are higher levels of damage. There's a kind of a reputation damage to the internet that for a number of people, for a number of not just individuals but also for people operating networks, people running companies. It means that you can have somewhat less trust in what you're doing on the internet than you thought. And I think we need to try and counter that.
So how is this likely to change the way that if you like, the technical community, the internet community actually responds and does things?
So I think what we've seen so far is both within specific deployments. So for example, people running data centers are starting to encrypt the links between those data centers now and did not in the past. But in the standards community, we see people are paying much more attention, renewed kind of vigor in terms of paying attention to trying to protect privacy for data, for users, and so on. And I think the difference is, 2 years ago, this was some kind of theoretical attack that only the paranoid cared about. Now we know it's happening, and that motivates people to actually deal with it much better.
And what are the consequences for the community to do with the infrastructures and the national research and education networks and so on, and what do they need to be prepared for?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One is that the reaction, the proper reaction to this is to try and improve the privacy properties of our protocols and of our applications. So that oftentimes will mean encrypting more traffic. If you're a network administrator or running an NREN, then you're used to being able to look at the traffic in order to apply your policy. So you may be able to look and see that this is a particular type of application that's using too much bandwidth, or its packets are going the wrong way, or whatever. If we now start encrypting that makes that more of a challenge. So one of the things I think for network operators is that we'll have to find a new balance between how we manage networks, but when when the networks and the applications in the network are trying to protect privacy better. And I think it's a balance that we'll achieve over time. I think also specifically for the NRENs, they're in a position perhaps because they're closer to the research community where they can maybe take a lead and investigate new ways of managing your network and new ways of protecting the traffic in the network and for the users.
If there's, say, a specific first step that you would like to see this e-infrastructure and NREN community take now, what would it be?
Well, I'd ask them first, because I don't run a network. So I think maybe that's the first step, is to consider this as an attack. figure out what that means in terms of the threat model. What do you think might be happening if you're connecting to another national research network somewhere else? Perhaps now we know that there's a reasonable probability those packets are being recorded somewhere. What's your reaction to that? So I think starting to consider the attack, consider the threat model, and see how do they think that things should change is probably the best first step. So think about it, I think is the thing.
And it sounds like talk about it is also part of that equation, actually communicate not only among the NRENs but also with the IETF community, other technical communities.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think, particularly, let's say for the IETF, if we can get feedback from operators that some protocol that we've defined is hard to use or easy to use, or this one's better and that one's harder, that's wonderful feedback, and it will influence then the implementations, which will go into the next cycle of deployments in these research networks. So yeah, I think getting that feedback would be super.
Great. Well, hopefully we'll be able to help each other with that.
Great. Okay.